KFI AM 640, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, iHeartRadio app. It's later with Mo Kelly, and we're counting down to Chateau Les Mots this Friday, Independence Day, America's birthday, the day in which Mark Ronner refuses to show up and do the show with us live in person.
Well, it's because I'm so dedicated to work.
But we would be working as well. You can do the news from Chateau Les Mots.
Logistics are problematic, Mo.
Can't you just write your news out in advance or take it off? Can't you do RCS remotely?
Perhaps this is an item best discussed off air. I would love to go. It sounds like fun, and I despite what you may think, I'm starved for human contact.
Well, I'm just letting you know the invitation is still out there. It's extended to you, okay?
Let me just say that for the last 5 years with COVID, I felt like I'm under house arrest with work release. I'd love to go to a party.
Okay, just letting you know.
Okay.
But most importantly, today is Stefan's birthday. He is a whole 24 today.
That it is.
24.
Oh, that's a hard 24.
A rough one.
Happy birthday, Foosh.
Thank you.
I know that you've been celebrating all day long, and people have been reminding you of your birthday all day long, but how has your birthday been thus far?
It's been pretty good. It started out pretty normal. I just, got up, did my thing at home, getting ready for different shows, and then I come here, and then had some pizza, which I know Mo was able to partake in, luckily.
One slice. I had one slice.
I like that he was so specific, because I was like, I don't want him to leave left out. I had one. Just one. And then, we had some fun. So that was good.
Do you have expectations going in? Some people put a lot on their birthdays. Like they have to have a great birthday. They have to do something special. They have to have some sort of a gift. Or do you have any type of expectations for your birthday?
No, because I got kind of lucky that it's so close to the 4th. So we would usually celebrate we would do a really small gathering on my actual birthday, and then as a kid, and then we would kind of celebrate my birthday as a kind of a party on the 4th.
Okay.
With my family. So that was cool.
Yeah, mine is close to Thanksgiving, so it doesn't have that same type of feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine getting family together, but still, I need focus to be on me. Or at least when I was a child, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
None of that is as bad a ripoff as having your birthday be on or around Christmas. You guys got off easy.
I don't know about that. Growing up, there were a lot of times where relatives just gave us one gift for both.
So I wouldn't tolerate that if I were you.
I was in that window. I'm within a month of Christmas, so people just said, "Here you go."
Oh, that will not stand.
I know. I went through it. But what are you going to say when you're like 12? That's messed up.
Yeah.
Well,
with swear words. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Then get my ass kicked.
Well, you're the victim. Don't be gaslit.
No, I remember when I was maybe 6 or 7, and my mother had gone on a church trip to Vegas. I know, strange, but she did. She was gone for the weekend. I was staying at my babysitter's house for the weekend. And for some reason, I started cussing up a storm, thinking no one's going to hear me. No one's going to tell me. And I remember when they got back in town, I was staying there. My father went somewhere else, but they both came to pick me up on, they returned to Sunday night. And my father came up to me and said, I heard you were cussing up a storm while I was gone.
High fives? Did he give you high fives?
No. It was a very hushed, quiet tone. And he said, I'll see you when we get home.
Oh.
And then he tore my ass up when I got home.
Okay,
so to this day, I don't say another mother-father cuss word ever.
Of course not.
F them all.
When I was a child, I had my mouth literally washed out with soap for swearing.
Oh. And they did that back then. That was not uncommon. It's just, it never happened to me. My parents' choice of weapon was the belt. With the belt buckle.
Neither really recommended, honestly. Seems like there are better ways to deal with that.
No. I don't know. You might have experienced some child abuse, straight up child abuse, which is different.
You could be on the mark with that. Yes.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But we have a huge show tonight. Yes, we're going to get into the Diddy verdict in just a moment. Yes, we're going to be watching and letting you know what is happening in the Dodger game as Clayton Kershaw goes for his 3,000th strikeout. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's already immortalized in Dodgers history, but he's trying to pass the 3,000 strikeout plateau tonight. The game just started, just underway. We're watching it in the studio, so we will let you know if and when it does happen. Maybe we'll try to get some audio from that. And also, we have to talk about how California colleges can now pay athletes directly and how you and me as taxpayers might be footing some of the bill. In other news, homeless populations have been dropping dramatically in both Hollywood and Venice. We've heard how those have been almost traps for homelessness, where people just move there, and that may not be the case anymore. We have so much to discuss. But before we go to break, yes, I'm sure you've all seen the news of Diddy with that mixed verdict, that mixed bag. A little bit of good news, but not a lot of good news. But most notably, he was not convicted on the most serious charges, specifically found not guilty on one count of racketeering conspiracy, not guilty on 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. You've heard the KFI 24-hour newsroom detail this information, and also how he was remanded back to prison. He was not granted bail, in large part because of the charges that he was found guilty on. He was ineligible to be granted bail. So from what I heard, that he was expecting to go home until sentencing. That is not going to be the case. I have some real concerns about what this means, big picture. Last night, for my final thought, I was saying that this was going to be a marker in the sense of where we are in this post-Me Too moment. And I can point to mistakes that I believe, in my humble estimation, that the prosecution made. In fact, I was not surprised that the defense made no effort to call any witnesses. They were basically daring the jurors to find Sean Diddy Combs guilty, thinking that the prosecution hadn't met their burden of proof. And for the most part, they were right. And I'm not so sure I'm happy about how this turned out. It's almost like, and Mark, you would appreciate this, I just want to throw this word in there. It's almost like a Pyrrhic victory.
Sure.
All this effort, all this fight to get Diddy in prison. Not saying that you just want to throw an innocent man in prison, but there was a lot of effort. We're talking about the full weight of the federal government, which came down on the head of Diddy, and they got 2 convictions, and he most definitely is not going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He may possibly see some real time, but that's not even guaranteed. And I wonder if it was much ado about nothing.
Really?
Well, put it this way. I think about what Cassie may be thinking, whether it was worth it, whether all telling her story again and again on the stand, having to be cross-examined. And I would say that the prosecution kind of wasted that forward momentum and did not build out the case thoroughly enough to demonstrate racketeering and the more serious charges. If I were Cassie, I would wonder, I don't know if she is thinking that or has thought it, but I would wonder whether it was all worth it. Because he's going to get out. Let's say they give him 10 years. He's out in 7. He's already served. Time served is like maybe a year or so. I don't know if that's going to be enough for what they had to put up with.
I see your point, but it makes me think first and foremost about the old saying that there are different justice systems for people with money and people without.
And that's more evident right now than ever before. And I wonder if you happen to be a woman who did not come forward connected to the Diddy history, whether you said, woo, thank goodness I didn't. Or if you're a woman who was sexually assaulted allegedly by another powerful man, whether this gives you pause. It's Later with Mo Kelly. We'll have more on Diddy in just a moment. KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640 is Later with Mo Kelly. We're live on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and the iHeartRadio app. And I just gotten into my thoughts about the Diddy verdict, which was a mixed bag. That's my terminology. It was a mixed verdict. And you can say, yeah, you're happy, air quotes, that justice was done, but the way it played out, it's very, very messy. He was convicted on the lesser charges. He was acquitted on the more serious charges. It was a 7-week trial, had exhaustive media coverage. And I would understand if you feel a bit empty or it feels a bit incomplete. I mean, yes, there's still sentencing, but the most that Diddy can get as a first-time offender, mind you, is 20 years. So he's not going to get 20 years. He was eligible for 10 years on each charge. I don't think he's going to, and the prosecutors are going to ask for that maximum. They're not going to get that maximum. So we're talking percentages of that. We're talking a fraction of that. I think he's going to get 10 years or fewer. He'll get credit for maybe a year served. He'll be out in 5 or 6, and then people will move on with their lives. But the people who testified, like Cassie Ventura and others, probably are very concerned. In fact, Cassie's lawyer today released a statement talking about how dangerous Diddy is even now. And that was part of the reason why some people refused to come forward. Some people refused to testify because they were afraid for themselves and their families. And I don't know if Diddy is dumb enough, my phrase, dumb enough to do something in revenge, do something to those who might have spoken out against him. But from what we know of him, there's reason to be concerned. There's definitely reason to be concerned in the way that Tawala and I were talking about how back when this was happening in real time, there were real consequences. There was a real fear for one's safety, for not only themselves and their family. The whole thing about Kid Cudi and his car being blown up, that's an old story. I mean, that's something that I know Tawala and I have known about for many, many years. But there are also some other stories out there where there's a reason why it was an open secret. Open in the respect that, yeah, we knew some of the things. They were more urban legends and myths, but we weren't surprised when we got the specifics. When the video came out about Cassie in the hotel, that I don't think that really surprised anyone, with the exception of those who have no understanding of who Diddy purportedly was.
So far, from everything I've seen on social media, I'm actually pleasantly surprised with the social media response to the guilty verdicts. I expected there to be a whole lot more cries of injustice. Most every person that I've looked at, every thread that I follow, where I've read down in the comments, most everyone sees this as quite possibly for the first time in this America, a known black figure not being lynched by the legal system and given a just sentencing. Everyone thought that this was going to go out of control and they were going to go for convictions on all charges and it'd be out of control. And I was like, no, he got charged and was found guilty for the things that, for all of everyone that knows this is what he's in there for.
I think they overcharged him.
Overcharged, absolutely. And if he would have been charged for, the racketeer and all that, then it would have been like, okay, all right, come on. Will he do time? Absolutely. 10 years, you got it. You said it right on. The only issue that we have in the community, and a lot of people who are wondering still why there wasn't more brought to the table against him, is because and remember, a lot of people forget, day one of this trial, there was a witness that was supposed to come forward.
That's right.
And did not. Day one. Disappeared from there are all types of reports of even former security guards who were threatened, who he was calling. Remember, we talked about, he was allegedly calling individuals from the prison, and he had a conversation with one of us and saying, hey, speaking
he
the
was
language
reprimanded by the judge.
Yeah, speaking the language of put a green light on that individual, so forth and so on, which we understood what that means in the streets. He was letting it be known that this is someone who I know is out there talking about me. Take care of them. This is not done.
The concern is real, though.
It is. It's real for everyone who knows. Even once he gets in prison and once he gets access to a phone, access to communication, there's a lot of people who are still nervous. There are still angles that he can work to potentially make stuff go away.
When you're super rich, and yes, this trial was incredibly expensive for Diddy, people don't understand what that really means as far as the resources which are still available to Diddy. Yes, did he spend a lot of money on this trial in his defense? Yes, but he's not broke. He still has all the rights to all his music publishing and all the songs that you hear on the radio. He's still getting paid for. He's not going to be destitute. He has access to things and people who can harm others. And that is something that Cassie and the people who didn't come forward, the people who did come forward, the people who thought about coming forward are very concerned with. Now, to you, when you were taking your sample of social media, I'd noticed something else. I noticed the idiots who were bathing themselves in baby oil outside the courtroom, outside the court, in celebration of Diddy being found not guilty on the more serious charges.
Look, my block and delete finger was active today. And that's one thing, one of the reasons why I was on social media in the first place, not necessarily to see what people were saying. I was going on to see who I needed to block, who was going to be talking bad about Cassie, who, there's one individual who was like, when are we going to have the Cassie trial? Is that up next? Block, delete. Things like that. I'm like, block, delete. Oh, you have something, block, delete. That was a lot of time because I'm like, I love how people reveal themselves. And I'm like, oh, I believe that this is how you are. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I always judge people. And yes, I do judge because I'm clear on what the Bible says. Judging has to do with eternal damnation, not being wary of our associations and how people carry themselves. I usually judge people by how they defend the indefensible.
Yes.
Or when they want to step up to the plate to defend the incorrigible, the irredeemable, then I know exactly who you are and who you value, what you value. This is not a question of, it was a question of whether Diddy was guilty or not guilty relative to the charges, but it wasn't a question of whether Diddy was a decent individual. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have to be found guilty on everything for you to realize that he is a garbage individual. And he was not appropriately charged with the right crimes for the court of law to put him away for any extended period of time. And we didn't have the requisite witnesses to come forward to get it done. I don't completely blame the prosecution team because they were hamstrung, which you highlighted how at least one witness dropped out of sight. It was a day one witness. I remember It was the first day of court. Yep. We don't know how many other witnesses they planned to call and just did not or could not depend on because they were shaky, flaky, or what have you. But I don't believe that this is the end of it, regardless of the sentencing. There's going to be some blowback because I just know how the industry works. You look at, I use Suge Knight as an example. He's been going back and forth with the people who he felt did him wrong for the past 20 years. He's still talking about Tupac.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
These grudges will go on for people's lives. And it's not the desired result that we all may have wanted for Diddy, but it does highlight how even still we can't get it right as far as both believing women and protecting them. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. When we come back, we're going to talk about how California colleges can now pay athletes directly. We're not talking about name, image, and likeness in a third-party corporation. Pay them directly, which means you and I may pay for that.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640 is Later with Mo Kelly. We're live everywhere on social media and the iHeartRadio app. Did you know that starting today, California universities can pay their athletes directly? Heretofore, you'd have a middleman. In name, image, and likenesses, you'd have, let's say, companies like Joe's Car Wash, and they would sponsor athletes. They would get a fund together to help pay for athletes or entice athletes to come to the university. So you had a middle person. It wasn't the university directly paying. You could have like a coalition or a consortium of businesses, and they'll pool money together in the hopes of having top athletes transfer from another university or recruit athletes out of high school. That's how it's been for the past few years. Now it's changed where there's no pretense. You can just go ahead and basically put these athletes on a payroll and pay them directly. I don't know if you know this, but there's an estimate which suggests that some student athletes at UC Berkeley, Cal, okay, Cal's not a huge sports institution. Okay, they have football team, yeah, they have the basketball team, but neither is on the verge of winning a national championship, never have, never will. You know, they're not a sports a program, UC program like that. We're not talking about UCLA or anything like that. Some student athletes at UC Berkeley make roughly $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year. And all the money will usually pretty much go to football and basketball players, the revenue generating sports. Those are the ones, because the revenue generating sports are the ones that are most in need of those high profile athletes. You have a good football team, good basketball team. You go to the NCAA tournament if you're a basketball team, or you go to a bowl game that produces revenue for the institution. That's why it's really important to get top talent. Now, if you're the water polo team or you're the lacrosse team, it's nice that you went to the NCAAs, but you're not bringing in the type of money that the big sports are. Yeah, you play field hockey. That's nice. You're on the swimming team. Oh, bully for you. You're not generating revenue for the university. That's why you have these name and image and likenesses deals with all of these players, and you want to make sure you keep them happy because it's a wild, wild west out there. You can now transfer from school to school. Well, let me back up. It used to be if you transferred, let's say you transferred from USC to UCLA, you'd have to sit out a year. You couldn't transfer in 2025 and then play in 2026. That's how it used to be. Now, ever since COVID and also these lawsuits against the NCAA, they changed it where it's free agency. You can go to a school 1 year, you can go to a school next year, you can go to another school the third year and not have to sit out. So there is really no deterrent, without getting into all the specifics. There's no real deterrent for an athlete not to transfer, or there's no real deterrent for an athlete to hold out and expect a bigger bag of money. And if that bigger bag of money doesn't come from the institution where he's presently playing, then he'll play somewhere else. Now the universities can go tap their own pockets and pay directly. Now, this is not exclusive of the coalition of businesses, a consortium of businesses, which raise money to also help buy these players. Let's call it what it is. They're buying these players. The difference is you don't have to do the funny accounting. You can pay directly. But when you talk about a school like UCLA, or you talk about a school like UC Berkeley, we're talking about the UC system, talking about these public schools, which are being funded by the state, in part by our taxes. So when you see those UCLA athletes, sorry to call you out, let's just say UC San Diego, let's just say UC Santa Cruz, UC Santa Barbara. Whenever you see those athletes, know then that some of our taxes are going to pay them. That superstar quarterback for UC school, for example, our tax dollars. And some people may not be comfortable with that. I get it. You think, wait a minute, I didn't ask for that. I'm not asking for UCLA to have a great football team. I'm not asking for UC Irvine to have a great baseball team. Why are my taxes going to that? Well, you don't have a say in that. You just have your money, which is going to go to these UC institutions, and then they can spend it however they see fit. So just know that when you watch TV and you're watching maybe UCLA play Michigan in the Big Ten, there's millions of dollars on that field in the form of payments directly to the players. The whole idea of amateurism exists no longer. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640 live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. And now we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum and talk about some of the homeless populations in Southern California, which evidently have been dramatically dropping in both Hollywood and Venice. We'll see why in just a moment.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
KFI AM 640. It's Later with Mo Kelly. Let's talk about the homeless situation. There might be just a glint of good news. According to the Santa Monica-based Rand Corporation, the number of unsheltered people in Hollywood, Skid Row, and Venice decreased 15% in 2024 in comparison to the prior year. But according to the study, it was likely driven by increased interim and permanent housing programs. So you can at least point to some data and suggest that some programs that Mayor Bass has sponsored and created is having some sort of positive impact. But it's with a caveat. The study found a nearly 700-person decrease in the combined unsheltered populations of Hollywood, a 49% decline, and Venice, a 22% decline. But here's the caveat. That was offset in part by a 170-person increase in Skid Row, a 9% increase. And so, although we are able to decrease the number of unsheltered, unhoused, homeless people in certain areas, invariably there are new people who are either moving from one homeless location to another, or they are newly homeless and joining those populations. And as I've said before, and this kind of confirms it, these populations are not static. It's not like you start off with 300 homeless people in Hollywood and then you have to decrease it from there. No, you may find temporary housing for 20 or 30 people, and then you may have 5 or 6 new homeless. And that's something that you're always fighting against. It's not just finding a place for the presently homeless, but also addressing the root causes and issues which lead to someone becoming homeless, because someone is homeless today who was not homeless yesterday. Someone was homeless in Hollywood and now they're homeless in some other location. It's almost like you rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If you're not actually dealing with the iceberg or the hole in the ship, then you're not actually improving the problem. And the question is, are we moving the homeless from one area to another, or are we actually decreasing it overall and also lessening the likelihood that people who are living on the edge will end up homeless? Are we decreasing that likelihood? And that's the thing which is, I'll say, less clear for me, that I'm less sure about. And although we can say big picture, total numbers, there are fewer homeless people. But are we just talking about LA City, as this study would tell you? But what does that mean if we're talking about LA County? Because there are a lot of people who may become homeless in LA City and they move one street over, if you know the geographic layout of LA, and then you're in LA County. And maybe you've decreased the number of homeless people in LA City, but you've increased the number of homeless people in LA County. And you know how they talk about statistics. They can tell you whatever you want them to tell you if you cut them up right. And this may be that. But at the same time, we're not seeing, or at least I'm not seeing in this study, any real focus on the causes of why people are becoming homeless. And if you can stop the flow of people who are becoming homeless, then you can have a real discussion about whether these policies are actually working, and also making that transition from homeless, unsheltered, to temporary housing, to permanent housing. And I know the homeless situation is like trying to end world hunger. You're not going to eradicate it, but you can mitigate it. You can lessen it. But always, there's this problem of the people who just don't want to see homeless people as opposed to dealing with the actual problem. And there is the eyeball test. When I walk outside in my neighborhood, and I can't speak for Stefan, but we live close enough where we have view of the same general neighborhoods. You can tell me that I'm just making up a number, 400 fewer people in LA County, fewer homeless people in LA County. But when I walk outside my door, it looks about the same. I see the same people doing the same things in the same area, and that's not including the people who are living in RVs right around the corner. That's not including the transient homeless population, who I can see they don't have a place that they've set up, but they're just kind of moving through the neighborhood.
Even the drive into work, because we have the same typical drive, but I drive through downtown once I hit USC.
Yep.
And looks pretty much the same to me every time I drive.
It looks the same. Now, statistically, it may be better. It may be. But the amount of trash and blight and graffiti and the bodies walking aimlessly. When I get on the 110 freeway, I see the same group of people urinating and defecating in broad daylight. You can tell me all the stats you want, but it doesn't pass the eyeball test. And for me, I needed to pass the eyeball test. I need to be able to say, wow, I mean, I haven't seen any homeless people today. And maybe that's being unrealistic. Maybe we'll never get to that point. It's almost like saying, wow, I haven't seen any graffiti today. That stuff is never going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just not going to happen. I wish I lived in a world in which there was no graffiti. That's just one of my personal pet peeves.
It goes back to your point about the metro. It's 50% safer. And then the next day you hear about a stabbing.
Yeah, right.
Or someone dying or someone getting shot. And it's like, okay, well, then what happened there?
Right. Or what do the stats mean if it hasn't fundamentally changed? And a part of fundamental change, it has to be sustained over a period of time. And part of the eyeball test is being able to see a market improvement over a period of time. I have not experienced that in my neighborhood. Of course, I don't live in Hollywood. I don't live in Venice. So this study doesn't really, I don't live on Skid Row. So this doesn't apply to me directly. And I don't know if we can get our arms around this homelessness problem and population. I don't know if we have the tools. I don't know if we even have the temerity. I don't know if we really are committed to doing something about it. And there are some factors which are just unchangeable. The cost of living in LA is going to be ridiculous forever. It's not like all of a sudden rents are going to be cut in half. It's not like they're going to be plentiful jobs tomorrow. Like there's not going to be AI. There's not going to be automation. There's not going to be an increase in technology, which is going to be working against the natural evolution of jobs. Those things we can't change. So we may be just fighting against reality as far as homelessness is concerned. But I do know, because I've traveled enough to see other countries, it's possible to do it. But those countries that I've been to have been far more dedicated to helping people and making sure that the things which are most important are the people, not capitalism. And I don't mean it like in South Korea, they have capitalism, but they care about people more than anything. That's why they lead in education. That's why they lead in healthcare. That's about caring about people. It's not about having, making sure you're making $17 an hour. It's about making sure that there is some degree of safety net where you don't have people living on the street. If you don't have people living on the street, never mind. It's Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app.
KFI and KOST HD2, Los Angeles, Orange County. More stimulating talk.